The Nvidia RTX 4090 has a serious problem, and no, it's not the fact that your cousin paid $3,000 for it to a scalper and then is curious why it's bottlenecking his system because he paired it with a 3600. That's not the problem. That's certainly a problem, but it's not the one that we're talking about today. We're talking about melting GPU power connectors. So this topic has been all the rage lately. Most of the big media outlets are covering it. And of course, it first appeared on your favorite way to get PC news, and that's going to be on Reddit. One user posted this picture right here. As you can see, the special power connector that the RTX 4090 requires, in this case, it seems to have melted on his GPU. As you can see, this is something you definitely want to not have happen. Not only is it going to damage your very expensive GPU, could result in a fire that's going to damage even more. So certainly very, very bad news. Now, before the RTX 4090 came out, there was a lot of talk about this connector being an issue. What happened was that first, Nvidia, during their testing, they made it evident to the company that has the specification for this particular connector that there was an issue depending on how you bend this cable. That seemed to be very early on in the process. And then that company, they made changes to everybody that would manufacture sort of a graphics card product and use this type of cable. They made enough changes where they were happy with the performance of this cable, where they also mentioned, of course, it has a limited number of times you can actually plug it and unplug it. But that's something else different. The primary issue and failure point with these power connectors has to do with how you bend them. They're really susceptible to, bending. You definitely don't want to do that, which of course is a problem because in a lot of cable management situations, you have no choice but to bend it, especially considering how wide the RTX 4090 is. It can barely fit in many cases, like even the Lian Li 011 Dynamic, which a lot of people have. If you get a certain 4090 that's a third-party AIB, it may not fit in your case with the glass panel on, and in cases where it does fit, I even put it in the Lian Li Odyssey, which is bigger than most cases, and while it does close with an Asus 4090 Tough, the problem is it's right up against the glass and it pushes it, therefore bending it slightly, so I have to keep the glass completely off until, of course, CableMod is coming out with a 90-degree cable adapter, which I definitely plan to use. I actually got their CableMod cables for the RTX 3090 Ti, which is absolutely amazing, and I have the 4090 version of their custom cables coming as well any day now, and that's going to be a huge improvement from sort of the stock little cable that you get even with an Asus Tough, which is a high-end 4090. Now, is this really a serious issue? First, I think it is. If you're going to have something that can melt in any situation, it really needs to be looked at closely because this is a GPU putting up a lot of power with a TDP of 450 watts. If Nvidia wants users to buy a product that's $1,600 or more MSRP, of course, your cousin paid $3,000 to a scalper, so that's even worse. But if you buy at MSRP, you're going to pay at least $1,599 or more for certain models. This product better be basically perfect for that type of money. It's not like we're beta testing something that's extremely new. The 4090 is very powerful, but similar technology that we've had before with GPUs. It's not something that we've never with proprietary connectors and different things that have to be there. In fact, even Buildzoid did some analysis of what's going on here, and according to him, you don't even need to have this sort of smaller power connector. You just have to make more room on the PCB to have, different 8-pin connectors for the power. So it's not even something that's absolutely necessary to just save space. Of course, you would have to make design changes, but maybe it's better to be safer than sorry and just end up having a bigger, bulkier GPU, at least one that's not going to melt and make the consumers really doubt the quality product that they're getting. So that's definitely a major issue. I'm not sure at this point if Nvidia would go back to the drawing board in terms of the PCB of the GPU and make changes there. Maybe for the 4090 Ti, which we thought was going to have like 600 watts, imagine that, 600 watts. If 450 is already melting these connectors, if 600 watts is going to be insane. Now it makes sense why they never released that out to the market yet in anything above like 450 to 500 watts. So We're going to see if they make physical changes to the PCB. I think that might make some sense. And of course, different alternative creative methods for like 90-degree cables like CableMod has. I think that's going to make a big difference, because at least then you can go straight down with the cable, and if your glass is pretty close, it won't be a problem because it's not going to be touching it and sort of bending it in any really awkward way. Of course, when the RTX 3000 first came out, like the 3090 and 3080, there were VRAM overheating issues, but that was often due to the thermal pads. This issue here seems to be across the board, no pun intended, with various 4090s. It's hard to say exactly which ones are affected, which are going to be worse, because it really comes down to the cable. So we don't know if these cables are really any different. The specification is the same, but is Asus going to have the same quality cable as maybe the Nvidia Founders Edition, or maybe that MSI might have? That's going to be up for debate. We're going to have to do some analysis to see exactly what's going on. But for now, if you have a 4090, just don't bend that cable. Don't put any pressure on it. Leave it as free as it can possibly be, and try not to put the glass up against it. And then of course, just keep your eye on it. Maybe try to inspect it. You would even think that it might be a good idea to pull it out once in a while and see if any of the connections show any type of melting or issues. But remember, these power cables apparently have a limited lifespan. So by doing that, you're probably reducing the efficacy of the cable itself. So that's not even something you could really recommend doing, aside from visually inspecting it while it's connected. So definitely a lot going on here. I mean, I use a 4090. What I'm going to continue to do is make sure, at least for now, the cable is free of any obstruction, even if the side panel has to be off. And of course, I'm going to be using the CableMod special cables, which I should be getting any day. Hopefully those will physically fit a little bit better in a lot of different cases, mine included. That way I don't have to really move it in any awkward way. And of course, they do have some 90-degree, and even I saw recently that they're going to have a 180-degree solution, meaning you'll be able to move the cable around in many different directions. They posted that on Reddit to some users that were asking about the cables. So that's going to be at least a solution for now, but we have to see what Nvidia is going to do. Of course, they're going to say that the cable's safe. They're going to sort of, shift around blame, and they're going to say it's the standard. It's always been like this. But if people are having issues with 4090s, people are going to be a little bit afraid, even if they've bought it already. So they're going to have to address this issue going forward. So while I wouldn't sell your 4090, I would just say be cautious, be aware that this is a potential issue, and then just take those different preventive measures. Make sure you have enough spacing, make sure you're not bending the cable in any weird way. And if you can get a custom cable like the one that I'm going to use from CableMods that I've used before on the 3090 Ti, that's going to be probably a good way to go, especially with like a 90-degree type of application. At least that way you're not putting any undue stress on the cable itself. But certainly for now, after buying such an expensive GPU that's supposed to be the pinnacle of performance and of GPU design, you really don't expect these little things to pop up. There's been a small sample size of issues, but once again, not that many 4090s out in the market yet, even though a lot of people have bought them. So we have yet to see if this is a big widespread issue. According to Nvidia, the connector's fine. We're going to see what's exactly going to happen, if these are just fluke cases that have occurred. Hard to make any type of really assumption at this point, but pushing that much power through these cables, maybe there should be a better solution. We'll see what Nvidia says during the next coming days, but for now, just try to be careful if you do have a 4090 and take the best preventive measures possible. All right, guys, what do you think about this issue? Is it something that's going to keep you from buying a 4090? If you were going to buy one anyway, I'd assume you probably would have tried already. Or is it something that scares you for other GPUs? By the way, AMD came out and said that they're not going to use this connector on their GPU. So they probably weren't planning to use it in the first place. Maybe their GPUs are not pulling this type of power. And if they are, maybe it's only the very, very high end one. So they're going to be free from any of these issues. They just threw that in there to throw shade at Nvidia, of course. It's another way of saying that their GPUs maybe are more efficient. Nvidia could say they're pushing more performance and more power. So I don't think that's a big deal. They're not using this cable. It is something just to save space and things like that. I'm fine with doing 3 8-pin or even 4 on a GPU. I think it looks pretty cool, especially with custom cables, but I'd rather it be safe first, and then you have the visual appeal later. And it's no doubt that visually these cables don't look good to begin with. Too many little connections coming out. So definitely good if they had a one cable solution with newer power supplies. That's when the discussion of ATX 3.0 is going to enter the conversation. Of course, we don't have too many of them out in the the market yet. They're just starting to appear. There's been a lot of debate if ATX 2.0 power supplies are safe, and it seems to be continuing that confusion with these problems popping up. Even certain people in the industry like Johnny Guru, who's done a lot of power supply reviews but now works for Corsair, he said current power supplies are more than fine and you can still have smart connectors, but if we keep having these issues, we're going to see probably a faster adoption of ATX 3.0. So we're going to have to see what these power supplies bring. I wouldn't go out and buy one just now until they're a little bit more mature and we know it's going to be a solution that absolutely works, but certainly seems to be the direction that we might have to go in with these much more powerful GPUs. All right, guys, so let me know what you think down below. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.